Hello and welcome to the Atomic Hobo. My name's Julie McDowell and I'm a nuclear journalist, and once a week I'll bring you a different aspect of how Britain and others prepared for nuclear war. This week we're going underground inside a nuclear bunker. The bunker is Barnton Quarry in Edinburgh, and it's currently not open to the public, so you're getting special audio access courtesy of the Atomic Hobo. The bunker is closed because it's undergoing a massive restoration just now. And I suppose it's dangerous at the moment, full of holes and sudden drops, with nails sticking out of the wall, saws and chisels lying everywhere, and there's lots of pools of melted glass lying all over the floor. I was given a tour round the bunker just now by Grant Moore. He's a fellow bunker nerd who's helping with the restoration. I did some recording down there, so we'll hear Grant explain certain things to us about how they're rebuilding the bunker and what they're planning to do with it when it's ready. There are also some great pictures on my Twitter account, which is at Julie A. McDowell. Now, before we go into the bunker, let me give you some brief history. From 1953 until 1969, it was involved in radar operations, basically protecting the UK skies from Russian bombers. There were several huge bunkers like this across Britain, and each one looked after a different sector of the country. The bunker had this role until 1969 because at that point radar technology had moved on so quickly that the system they had been using became obsolete. Also, the political situation had changed. Previously they'd been looking at the skies for a big huge lumbering bomber coming over the horizon, but by this point they were dealing instead with intercontinental ballistic missiles, and really there's no defence against them. You can't spot one on the sky and then try and shoot it down. So the thinking changed. Instead of defence, trying to prevent the attack, attention moved to dealing with the horrible aftermath of the attack. Barnton Quarry Bunker became an RSG, a regional seat of government. The idea there was that if London and central government was destroyed in a nuclear war, which is obviously likely, London's always going to be a huge target, then government would disperse itself around the country. So each of these regional seats of government, and there were 12, would look after their own region of the country. Barnton Quarry would have looked after Scotland. So once it had been decided that nuclear war was inevitable, and once the sirens started to go off, about 400 civil servants would be down in Barnton Quarry, and their horrible task would be to look after the remains of Scotland, to organise things like clearing the bodies off the streets, sorting out medical supplies and food stocks, and issuing some nice calming instructions to the population. For that purpose there was a tiny BBC studio down in the bunker. Now, the man in charge of all this would have been the Scottish Secretary, although I think I remember reading in an interview somewhere that one of the previous Scottish Secretaries, Michael Forsyth, when he learned of these plans, he said there was no way he was going unless he could take his wife and children. But there was no room for any wives or children. You simply turned up on your own, or you didn't turn up at all. The bunkers in England would have been led by local government leaders. These men would have had total power after a nuclear war. We discussed in last week's podcast about food and how food would be used as a reward for work done after a nuclear war, and it could also be withheld as a punishment, because there's no point throwing someone in jail. That's hardly a punishment after a nuclear war, because you'd get your bed and board in a jail. The only possible punishment would be withholding of food, or in an even more severe situation, death. But there are no courts anymore, there are no judges and juries to pronounce on that, so it's up to the local government officers, the leaders, and they would literally have power of life or death. They could sentence you to be executed. Here's a short clip from a 1980 edition of Panorama where Jeremy Paxman explored these plans, and he speaks to one of the commissioners for Hull who would have this horrible power of life or death.
In the end, it comes down to one man, a man with more power than he could ever have imagined, even in his grossest dreams or nightmares. Keith Bridge, a former accountant.
How much power do you have as controller?
As soon as the bomb goes off, total power, theoretically.
That would include power over the police, fire brigade, all that sort of thing?
Yes. And life and death.
Powers of life and death?
Yes.
What does that mean?
That if people were looting, it would be within my competence to instruct that they be executed.
Would you expect that kind of situation to arise?
It's quite possible. It's feasible.
Does having that kind of power, total power, worry you?
No.
Maybe it's just me, but I would like the people in charge to be worried about these things. I would like this man to lie awake at night worrying about that, thinking about that, wondering what he would do, you know, using a bit of imagination. But let's get back to Barnton Quarry. So we know what the bunker was for. At the end of the Cold War, it was abandoned. There were several plans to turn it into a shellfish farm or luxury flats, but these plans all came to nothing. I think mainly because it's a bunker, it's not easy to adapt or remodel. But unfortunately, not everyone forgot about the old bunker. Some thieves knew it was there, and they knew that it contained a telephone exchange which was rich in copper wire. They broke in and stripped all the machinery. Anything of value in the bunker was taken. They even made off with the bunker's huge blast doors. Doesn't matter that they weighed 1.5 tons each. The thieves took these. They were made of high-grade steel, and so I suppose worth a fortune in scrap metal. So the bunker had been stripped of value, the doors were gone, so it was now lying open, and of course, kids being kids, a lot of the local children would go in, use it as a spectacularly dangerous play area. And of course, it was vandalised over the years, smashed and wrecked. Finally, it was set on fire. There was one room in the bunker which was stacked full of old tyres, and a truck was rammed into the entrance tunnel. The whole thing was set on fire. It burned for days with temperatures reaching 800 degrees. So you can imagine the state that it was in afterwards. So the bunker is now being restored with plans to eventually open it to the public as a museum. So let's take a look inside with Grant and we'll see how they're getting on. Now, when you first enter Barnton Quarry, you have to go down a long tunnel. It's partly reinforced with some metal tunnelling taken from the London Underground. And when you get to the foot of the tunnel, it takes a right angle. That's called a dogleg corridor. And the reason it turns at that sharp angle is to stop any nuclear blasts which might have got in from rushing down the tunnel and destroying everything. And once you're round that corner, you're into the main body of the bunker. And there's lots of work going on. It really looks like a building site inside. Don't imagine it to be like a bunker as you've seen in Cold War films. It really is at the moment a building site. But the workers and the volunteers are restoring it exactly to how it was. Their dedication is quite astonishing. So I'll let Grant explain how they're using melted glass to work out which door went where, which stairway went there. When the fire burned at 800 degrees, it melted all the glass panels, and I'll let Grant explain how they're using that melted glass to work out, like a jigsaw, which pieces go where.
One of the problems we've had is finding like the heights of the floors and where the steps have been, because they're not actually on the original plans. A lot of it's like the wooden fittings. So what's happened is, like in a lot of the doorways, the glass is melted and it's ended up on the floor. And what's happened is that glass has kind of run into the original wood, and then the wood's all burnt out. So what's happened is the glass is all kind of in the right shape. So we've scraped all the glass off the floor and then we've rebuilt to the level of where the glass is, and it's given us a very accurate representation of where the steps are.
The melted glass does look very odd. If you look at it on the ground, it just looks like a kind of swirly, bumpy pattern on the concrete, but when you kick at it, it's rock solid. Part of the reason the fire burned so fiercely was because some of the rooms contain bitumen. Here's Grant again.
This is an inch of bitumen. It's called pitch mastic, and you can see it's up the walls there. It's black bitumen. It's basically liquid bitumen that's been put down, and it was for soundproofing. So basically what you had was a pool of an inch thick of bitumen burning in there, and the heat off that bitumen is what's caused the damage, and we actually had to scrape it up off the floors in there because it was all burnt and everything was melted into it, so we scraped it all up. But that's what we have in here. So that's what's caused the damage, and in fact this area here is the worst damage in the whole bunker, the ComSen over there. But structural engineer was in here and had a look at it and said it's structural. We basically blast it back, protect it, spray concrete on it again, and it's done. We'll just box it in, it's fine. It's not actually caused an issue.
Was it 800 degrees, you said, the fire?
Yeah, so the metallurgist said 800 degrees, the metal had been exposed to 800 degrees for a considerable period of time. And yeah, this, you can obviously see the damage in here is pretty considerable.
As we were examining the terrible damage in that room, the room was utterly black from the fire. I noticed a burned out row of toilets, and you'll notice from one of my previous podcasts, we talked about anti-suicide toilets in a Prague nuclear bunker, and my boyfriend David, who's with me, suggested I'm getting quite obsessed with nuclear toilets, but nonetheless I had to stop and ask Grant what the story was with them, because the ladies' toilets in that bunker are quite considerable, whereas the men's toilets are tiny, and Grant will explain why. And forgive this obsession with nuclear toilets.
That's the ladies' toilets, yeah. So interestingly, I don't know if I told you this before, but the whole building here was set up around the WRAF. So in 1949, when the Air Ministry sat down in 1950 and agreed on the specification for the R4 bunkers, they anticipated that after World War II, most of the fighter plotters were female. So they just said, well, okay, the majority of the people going to be working in these buildings are going to be female. Turns out that actually from the 540 form, so we pulled the National Archives and got the whole operational record for Barnton Quarry. At peak staff here was 378, one female, and she was an officer.
Oh, right.
So basically, because it was national service, everyone was a bloke that worked here as a fighter plotter. So these were the female toilets, and you'll see that the male toilets are next door, they're half the size, and the female restroom is twice the size of the male restroom, but there was never any females, so I'm sure they just used the female areas.
Now, as we were walking through the bunker, something quite scary happened. You might say it's already scary to be far underground in a black and ruined nuclear bunker, but as we were having a wander through, we met someone who terrified me. Now, I was just yakking away to Grant, I don't know, probably asking him about nuclear toilets, when we heard a terrifying roar. Was it a nuclear detonation?
Oh! Loki!
Got right there.
Loki, come here. Loki! Loki, hey, come here. Ah, yes.
He's a good boy.
Here, Loki. Who's that?
You can probably smell our dog.
That's probably what it is, yeah.
He's a good boy.
You'll like what it says on his dog tag.
I'm too frightened to look.
No, he's fine, he's
Is he
fine.
okay?
He's just a pup. Loki! Loki! Come here. He's got on his dog tag, it says bunker dog.
Oh, does it?
It does, yeah.
Now, I'm a dog owner. I love dogs, although my dog is a tiny Cavalier Spaniel and Loki was an Alsatian, so there is quite a difference. So I do love dogs. I just don't like being down in a nuclear bunker with one who doesn't look very pleased to see me. So once all the soot has been scoured away, once the bunker's been rebuilt, once the scary dog has been told to go outside and play, what are the plans for Barnton Quarry? Now, one of the things I hate about nuclear bunkers, the tourist experience of a nuclear bunker, is that a lot of them have mannequins in them. You open up a door in any of these bunkers and you might find a bunch of mannequins who look as though they've been nicked from a 1987 branch of BHS. Now, I know bunkers need to do that because a bunker really, if it had been put into action, it's simply office space. It's office space from where civil servants would direct the end of the world. So you have to make it interesting, but nonetheless I hate seeing these mannequins in their uniforms. So I'd asked Grant about that and he agreed. He said mannequins, once Barnton Quarry has been turned into a museum, the mannequins will be gone. They've got no interest in mannequins. Instead, they want holograms. What about the holograms? Is there still a plan to have holograms?
Yeah, so we're going to be leveraging the latest technology.
Right.
So the latest thing we've actually been working with the Edinburgh Hack Lab, you know about maker spaces?
No.
Hack labs? It's guys that get together are just generally geeks that get together and build stuff.
Right.
We're working quite closely with the guys there. Those guys have offered to build us an interactive plotting table. So that we're going to actually have it all set up in such a way that the information can move. And,
Right.
you know, there'll be the people there obviously standing around it and the like, but you know, we want to try and get it as authentic as we can, so we're going to try and do a recognised air picture. So we're working with those guys, you know, big 18-foot table,
That's
centralised
great,
plotting
that's
table. So
great.
those guys have offered to get involved and help us out, so that's going to be good. But yes, absolutely interactive is what it's all about.
And the holograms, will they have like RAF uniforms?
Absolutely,
and all,
that's
if it
what
works,
we want to project. We want to project, have 3D projections, that's what we want to be able to do.
So RAF guys in uniform, and the quest for authenticity is such that Grant's actually on a project to track down all the original telephones from the bunker.
We're going to put everything on display and basically allow access all areas and put the stuff in here so people can walk amongst it. But unfortunately, I'm experiencing another museum theft's a big problem. People steal things. It's like, we want to have the original historical artefacts in here, so things like the phones. Like, we've just tracked down all the original phones. We found the guy that bought all the phones out of here.
Right.
So I'm currently negotiating with him to get them back. He's got 80 of the original phones, but we want them in here. So we're going to have speakers and CCTV.
So that's what's going on underground in Barnton Quarry. It was destroyed, wrecked and vandalised, but now local volunteers are putting it back together, giving up their spare time and their expertise. The money for the restoration, for the materials, etc., is coming from another nuclear bunker. There's one in Anstruther, and the money which comes in from the tickets there goes towards the restoration of Barnton Quarry. You can keep in touch with progress at Barnton Quarry by following them on Facebook. Their page is called Barnton Quarry Restoration Project. You can also see some photographs from the bunker on my Twitter feed at Julie A. McDowell. And I'd just like to finish by thanking Grant Moore again and all the team at Barnton Quarry. This is the second time now that Grant's given up his time to give me a tour of the bunker. And I'm just so glad that they're doing this, because nuclear bunkers, they don't seem to be given the respect that other historical venues would be. There's so much work and money given to, say, restoring or protecting old buildings, castles, etc. Nuclear bunkers don't seem to have the same respect. Maybe in the public consciousness they're not seen as sufficiently old and so worthy of protection. But they're monuments to a war which didn't happen, although a war which threatened to happen and almost did, and which we avoided by, in my opinion, sheer good luck. And that's why we should protect them and maintain them and visit them and look after them. I'll end with the quote, "Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it." So go ahead and visit your local bunker, even if it is full of those daft mannequins. I'm Julie McDowell, the Atomic Hobo, and thank you so much for listening.